Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 2nd of May. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Jonny McFarlane for the first time this week. How are we doing, Jonny?
Good, mate. Good. Great to be on. Looking forward to having a chat. I've obviously not discussed the game with anyone anyone live yet, so I'm looking forward to kind of drilling into some detail of the aftermath.
Yeah, we'll get your thoughts on events at Hampden shortly. Just a quick word for our sponsors, folks. You know the drill by now. Seneca Hair Restoration are the guys to go to if you're looking for a hair transplant. The number one hair transplant group in Europe. So if that is something you're thinking of, perhaps restoring some lost self-confidence, if you like, then the all-important links are in the description box. Do go and check them out. Right, let's talk Rangers. Well, first of all, Jonny, of course, I was on with Stevie and Joshua yesterday. There's some, if you missed those shows, folks, do go check them out on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. I know that a lot of you listen to us as well, so you can do that also. However, Jonny, we've not heard your thoughts on what took place at Hampden on Sunday. What was your main takeaways from the game?
Well, it was kind of expected, the performance, I suppose. I thought tactically Rangers were well set up, as everyone's kind of said. They looked pretty comfortable through the majority of the game. Celtic created one chance after a brain fart. Rangers created a chance which saw Tavernier hit the post and Fashion Sakala misses an open goal. And these are the thin margins in which Old Firm games are won and lost. And when you're in the ascendancy, when you're on top and dominant, these things fall for you. And when you're having a hard time, they tend not to. It's disappointing, obviously, but I don't think anything has changed as a result of that game, really. Everything that's going to happen in the summer is going to happen, regardless of that result. It's just one of those situations where every player on that team and every player in that squad, their future is already kind of decided. Yeah. And what it was about, really, was those guys leaving with the best possible send-off. And if it had been the Scottish Cup, then they'd be able to do that. They'd be able to leave with their heads held high. Now I think, Derek, what we're looking at really is that people like Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos should, in my view, be kind of put out to pasture.
Yes.
I saw your piece this morning. I totally agree. I don't think there's any point in continuing with players who have no sellable value and no desire to continue to play for the club. So I think you move on with the players that are either going to move and Rangers want to put them in the shop window, or guys that are potentially going to be around next season. It's straightforward for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we're going to discuss, as Jonny mentioned, folks, there's a couple of pieces on the website this morning. One good piece from Joshua on there, just explaining about the transfer rebuild and how Michael Beale will look to shape his squad. There's also the newsletter on there from myself, basically stating that any player that doesn't form part of Michael Beale's plans, as Jonny said, should now be put out to pasture. That they've got no place, I think, in the Rangers side going forward, other than Alan McGregor, who I feel is worthy of a send-off at Ibrox in the final home game of the season. I know he's getting his testimonial in the summer, but I think he is certainly deserving of a good old farewell.
Derek, I jump in there. Yeah, give him a farewell. So I don't have a problem with that. Alan McGregor, I think, obviously deserves a farewell at Ibrox in the last game of the season. I think Morelos, Ryan Kent, regardless of how they've ended it, they've been key figures in the biggest title, arguably, in the history of the club. They were involved in the team that came within a whisker of lifting a European trophy. They came within a penalty kick of immortality. So I don't have a problem with these guys getting a run out of some sort, whether it be as a substitute or from the start in the final game of the season. That's a slightly different argument to me.
Yeah.
But for the remaining games, and there are 5 games left, I think 4 of them at least should be about next season. And I would argue, say, the 5 should be about next season, but I don't have a problem with those players coming on as substitutes, for example. I think that's fine. To me, Michael Beale needs to show a level of ruthlessness now here. As much as anything else, it's about showing the fans that he can make a really tough decision. We know that he's got a really good relationship with Ryan Kent. But really, if he's not going to sign, what's the point? What's he going to bring to the table? You've got a guy that is not going to want to get injured. It's the same with Alfredo Morelos. There's nothing to play for. You know, they've already allowed the Rangers fans to make up their mind on them based on their delivery of performance. So, no, I think you've got to bring in young talent or guys that are still under contract. You know, in terms of the wing positions, you look at players like Lovelace, even Scott Wright, who there's reports this morning that Scott Wright has been told that he's no longer required, which I'm not surprised about. You know, you'd rather have him and put him in the shop window than have Ryan Kent to put Ryan Kent in the shop window for Ryan Kent. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, he and John McLaughlin reportedly told that they can find new clubs. I can see Scott Wright doing well down south at a championship club somewhere like that. I think he'll do a job for someone, but at Rangers it just hasn't worked. Rangers need better quality. And there's also a report as well that Matondo could be another player heading out in the summer. Listen, there's going to be a large influx of players heading out and into the club in the summer. As Michael Beale said, the biggest rebuild in years, so it's going to be quite something coming up. Let's get to a few of the comments coming in. Sander Staff says, good morning, you pair of sexy boys. I can't see Beale dropping players purely because they're out of contract. It's an interesting one. He's got the sort of 2 biggish games coming up, if you like, Johnny. Aberdeen and Celtic at Ibrox. The next 2 games. Now, of course, Celtic will have the opportunity, if they slip up at Tynecastle, of winning the league at Ibrox. Do you think that alters Michael Beale's thinking heading into that one, or would you like to see him just rip it up and just, like you say, lead the youngsters, give a lot of the French players opportunities from Sunday onwards?
I don't think it changes anything, to be honest. When it comes to Morelos and Kent in particular, I just think, as I've outlined, they're not going to be able to give you what you need. Fundamentally, if you've got a massive potential move, and believe me, for Morelos and Kent, it will be massive potential moves in the pipeline, financially for them, are you really going to give 100% when there's a 50-50 challenge with Starfeld or Cameron, Carter Vickers is going to be out, but Starfeld or whoever else they're playing at centre back? Of course you're not. You're not going to risk a leg break or an injury, or And to me, I know Kent was coming back from injury, so he wouldn't have been match sharp. But his performance and Alfredo Morelos' performance to some extent as well didn't look like they were 2 players giving their absolute all to me. It didn't look like fully committed to the cause, 100% behind getting the result type performances. They look like players who are maybe leaving a little bit in reserve. And listen, I can totally understand that from a point of view of ruthless business instinct. You know, you've got a commodity, which is your body, and you're putting out to the market, and you're going into a game where the challenges are going in blood and thunder. You know, it's one of those where you're like, are you going to jeopardize the next 4 years of your career and a contract that will secure your family?
Yeah.
In the case of Alfredo, his entire village, you look at the amount of money the young lad has poured into that area, with the Alfredo Morelos Foundation and things like that. So there's bigger things at play for them than Glasgow Rangers Football Club and Rangers fans. They're just focusing on their own career and their lives. And I'm not putting them into that situation where they have to make that choice. What is the point? It's not worked. So the definition of madness is continually trying the same thing over and over again, expecting the same result, a different result. We need, I think, there needs to be a cognizance now that those two have run the race. And okay, Fashion Sakala is enormously frustrating. We saw that throughout the game. Jeez, some of the clips that are doing the rounds, just bonkers. There's one that was on Twitter yesterday. It was an unbelievable passing move by Rangers.
It was actually
from the back, evading Celtic's press, eventually getting to Sakala, who beats two players, and then just wild shooting. Listen, we know he's frustrating, but I would rather play him being in contract, being sellable, and Scott Wright or Rabbi Matondo, who, by the way, once again, I thought looked good, looked bright when he came on. Rabbi Matondo, to me, looks like he's been in the gym. He looks top heavy, and I mean that in the best possible way. He looks like he's bulked up. For Scottish football, which is a good sign, because we know that that's something that's worked in the past. Famously, Mark Hateley, who struggled in Scottish football, went away and bulked up, added a couple of stone of muscle, and it completely changed and reinvigorated his time at the club. I'm not saying Rabbi Matondo's the next Mark Hateley, good God. But if he wants to have a platform where he can start to deliver, then I think that would be a good place to start. So I'd rather have these players in, those guys that we can either look at as potential sales for Rangers or guys that can be part of it next season. And I'm going to write about this today, Derek. I think it's quite interesting. While I think there is going to have to be, and I have been writing this for 3 months, a huge rebuild. You know, when Michael Beale said it was just a refresh, I did come out and say, no, it's not going to be a refresh. It's going to be a rebuild. Now, to be fair, Michael Beale can't really come out and say what he was thinking at that point, because they still had cups and potentially leagues to play for. But regardless, with this rebuild is going to be absolutely substantial. Make no mistake about it. But got to be important that Rangers don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are certain players, I think, that people are maybe discounting that will be part of things. And there has to be more than 4 players in the squad that are part of things. I think everyone's agreed Goldson, Tavernier, Cantwell, Raskin, you know, they're going to be the core foundations of what this team is built on. But there is also going to be a select few in there who I think should be part of it going forward. For example, I think if you look at Robbie McCrory, if you look at John Suter, if you look at Borna Barisic, maybe, if you look at potentially, let's just throw it out there, Rabbi Matondo again. I don't think you can just say, get rid of them all apart from those 4. I don't think that's going to work. So there will be some of these players who are in contract, who you won't be able to punt, that I think Rangers will have to keep. Now, outside those core 4 that we've talked about, the untouchables, if you will, I would say anyone else who there's an offer for, you would seriously think about. Ben Davies, for example. Rabbi Matondo is another one that you would, you know, if someone came in with what you paid for him, then you're probably going to have a look at that, aren't you? But I don't think the Rangers squad is going to be emptied apart from 4 players, do you?
No, there is a lot of comments coming in. Just going back, just touching on Sakala, that one that was doing the rounds on the internet last night, it was awful. The sitter, of course, we all know about. The worst for me was the one he took a shot and it went out for a shy, which is unforgivable at a professional level, really. It was absolutely dreadful. And I sort of disagree in a way. I wouldn't be just playing him just because Kent isn't playing. I think we've seen enough of Sakala. I know his numbers are generally good in terms of his goals and assists to games ratio, but Rangers need better quality in front of goal. They need the whole new forward line for me.
The thing is, Derek, right? I'm going to, and this is not going to be popular, but it's my genuine opinion. So, what can I do? I don't have a problem with Fashion Sakala remaining this part of this squad as a second choice winger stroke striker. I've always said this. I don't mind that he's erratic, that you can't rely on him. If he's a player that you're throwing in to see if he can pull something off, that he's a squad player who is going to go into these games, as Kev Armstrong says, in the league. I don't mind Sakala against Aberdeen, against Hearts, against St Mirren, against Motherwell. My problem is if you're relying on him when he's so erratic, he's the kind of player that will cost a manager their job in the biggest of games, especially in Scotland, where it really is just coming down to
even
Rangers versus Celtic.
Remember, even the Europa League final, Gio took him off just prior to penalties as well. He brought Ramsey on, but he had a nightmare
Gio
there
had
as well.
made the call, Derek. Gio had made the call that he wasn't going to be gambling on a player anymore. Like Sakala. Like Gio's Dutch. And the Dutch, I think, have a pretty low threshold when it comes to erratic football standards.
Yeah.
Now, I always remember the stories about Ronald de Boer and the cutting things he would say to people like Stephen Thompson. As these players started to arrive under Alex McLeish, the sort of standard was going down from the guys that he'd had around him in the Advocat era. Going from Claudio Caniggia, Shota Arveladze, and Michael Moles to Stephen Thompson. And they're doing sort of training drills where the Boer's rattling the ball about at pace, and Stephen Thompson is struggling to keep up because he's simply not good enough. And I think Gio would be coming at it from the position that, as coming from a country where they have the core basics in place, like controlling the ball, moving the ball, quality of finishing, he would expect that level from players at Rangers. I think Michael Beale, coming from a slightly different football culture, sees the benefits that Sakala's unpredictability bring, especially when trying to break down the low block. And I'm kind of with both of them. I agree with both of them because, a lot of my foundations of watching Rangers come from the Watersmith and the Advocat era, and there was a level of quality there that Sakala just doesn't meet. But I think if you're talking about 30 minutes to go against St Mirren and Paisley, and you're wanting to introduce a bit of chaos, I think Fashion Sakala has a place, and his numbers show that there. But it's
we can't be relying on him though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with that. I don't think you can rely on him certainly not as a number one, and not with the level of quality that's sort of not with the lack of numbers that are around them. Yeah. But listen, I've been saying this about Sakala for months, so I'm not going to change my mind now and pretend that I've not been saying that on the basis of one game. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Lots of comments coming in. Jeeb, good friend of the show. Morning, Jeeb, he says, I agree on Sakala. But there's so many comments coming. I'm going to get to a few of them here. There's an interesting one. Aldo, we'll touch on him. Any realistically do you see leaving? I know Michael Beale was asked by Stevie Clifford after the game on Sunday. Yeah, he said, a dozen in, dozen out. And he says it'll be around that, which is a huge amount of players coming in and going out. He did say it would be the biggest rebuild in years. An interesting one from Malt Whiskey. Quite a big comment here. It says, morning, lads. Sunny but cold here in Murray Coast. How does Beale go about gelling this new squad with the pressure of Champions League qualification on the horizon? Big job ahead. Absolutely. That's one thing. I think Rangers will have to play 2 qualifiers like they did this season to get into the Champions League group stages once again. I'm not entirely sure if that's after this season's debacle in the group stages, if that is ideal for Rangers. But of course, it's lucrative in terms of the finances. But that's another thing. It's a race against time, Johnny, isn't it? I know he's been busy working away. He did say in his press conference, meeting players, jetting off to far-flung places to have conversations with potential signings. It's crucial he gets as many players as he wants in as soon as possible, isn't it?
Well, I think Stevie said to him, the numbers would 12 in and 12 out be about right? And Michael Beale didn't dispute that.
Yeah.
He basically said those numbers are roughly accurate.
Yeah.
So that's a huge turnover of players. How many players in the Rangers squad now? 26, 27, something like that.
Yeah, around that, yeah.
It'll be a significant change to the core of the squad. And I don't think Michael Beale will know himself which players are leaving 100% right now. Obviously, he'll know in terms of the guys who are out of contract. But a lot of it will depend on who comes in with bids, won't it? You know, if Rabi Matondo and Fashion Sakala are the only two that have bids, those two will be going, won't they? Because you're looking to pull together some cash to spend in the market. So I think there's going to be fundamental change to this squad and this team. And there has to be, Derek. There absolutely has to be. You can't continually lose to Celtic without there being a massive turnover. And I'm looking at the players that have been linked so far. I have to say, I've got to be honest, I'm a little underwhelmed by some of them. Some of the names that are being mentioned at the moment. Obviously, it's speculation until the club confirm who's coming in.
Decent squad players, but they need better quality, I think.
Jack Butland is a good keeper, or was a good keeper, but he's not played a lot of football recently. But if he comes in hungry, desperate to play, desperate to perform, wanting to put down a marker, make a name for himself as a number one after being a number two, you have to say, a huge club in Manchester United this season.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that one. That one for me, I like it. Dowell, another player from Norwich. I've had a look at him. He's had decent numbers, to be fair. I've spoken to people who have said that they think he's a good player in the game, but he's had injury problems. It's not an exciting one for me.
I watched him a lot when he was at Wigan. I covered a few of the games down there, and he impressed me at that point. That's where he was on loan from Everton, and he got his move to Norwich. But from speaking to people down there, he's not as liked as Todd Cantwell was. Put it that way. I don't think they'll be too displeased if he was to leave Carroll Road. So and his injury record, like you say, Johnny, is one that ticks the box. If a lot of supporters think, oh, he's a crock. Of course, he's been out with a knee injury. Decent squad option, but that's all. That's what I'm saying. They need probably a bit more quality, I would say.
Yeah, listen, it might well be that Dowell, his signing will be about bringing in a squad player. It won't be someone who's coming in immediately. One thing I like about Dowell is that he's got that ability to do a number of positions. He can play in the right, he can play in the centre, and he can play a bit further back in terms of midfield. So he can pretty much play across the midfield. And, Beale's always said that he likes the idea of having these kind of hybrid players who can fit into a number of positions, and that fills perhaps a gap in the squad when there's injuries. So I can see the attraction there, but I'm always advocating, and I've always advocated on here about having a director of football and kind of being able to go across multiple markets. I've talked about my admiration of the rivals across the city and what they've done in terms of the transfer strategy, whether it's going to Japan, going to other countries, if it's Greece, they've gone all over the world. They've not Korea, they've not shown a limitation to kind of one market. And I just find this kind of focus on the English Championship a bit worrying. Now, I might be proved completely wrong. I might be talking absolute nonsense, Derek. But it's just something about the number of players that are coming from there. I just feel like that market is so saturated. There's so much money. There's so much ability to snap up quality down there. Yes, Joe Aribo was brought in. That was a great signing. Calvin Bassey was brought in. That was a great signing. So there is value there. But I don't know, Derek. It's just, I was hoping to hear Rangers being linked with players from far and wide. And, an indication that the club were stretching out to different markets and trying to build the best squad you could find value for money, bang for buck in this world. And I know Rangers have invested a huge amount of money in scouting, people don't realise, the scouting team was completely reconfigured, completely ripped apart and put back together at the start of the season. And there's more scouts working for Rangers than ever before right now. South America, for example, just a huge depth of scouting is going on in that country. And the Brexit rules in Scotland are a lot more lax, mean that Rangers can go out and get a player from that market. You look at Burnaby coming from Argentina, that wouldn't have gone through before Brexit. So I'd like to see in the weeks and months ahead a few more players coming from Europe and other parts of the world, because I just feel like there's a little bit of a kind of
I think
focus on that level.
Yeah, I think the thing that maybe might concern some is Michael Beale again. His words in a press conference recently says you'll be able to know the links with the players that they're bringing in because they have worked, him and his coaching staff will have worked with them before. So that you tend to think that I know he's worked in Brazil, Michael Beale in the past, but I don't envisage many Brazilians coming over to play for Rangers next season. But listen, I think a lot of the players that will be coming in will be from down south, and it's whether Rangers can find those gems a la Todd Cantwell. I think they're few and far between, that's for sure. Like you say, Johnny, there are gems down here, but often they're overpriced and they're out of Rangers' price range. So, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of names are going to be heading up the road. Ian Muir says, Johnny, what about Lawrence? Are we keeping him? Absolutely 100% unless a huge bid comes in. Now, I know he's out injured until the back end of pre-season, which isn't ideal. He will be playing catch-up next season, but Rangers have missed him massively this season. He hit the ground running when he came in from Derby County. He's been a huge loss. So he'll be, as the old cliche goes, he'll be like a new signing when he comes back, and hopefully he can recapture the form that he was in prior to that injury. So I would absolutely be all over keeping Tom Lawrence. Just on your Tav comment earlier about being one of the four, Johnny, I see some opposing comments on Tavernier. Now, I agree with you. I think he is part of the four I wouldn't be looking to get rid of. CGM55 says, I'm not agreeing on Tav. He can go if we get $2 million for him. What's your views on that? I see him come in for a bit of criticism again after the weekend. For me, I think it's a bit unjust. It was Rangers' best attacking outlet again. I thought at the weekend. Tavernier stays for me. It's all about getting better players in and around him, I think. But your opinion on Tav?
I don't think Tav's had the best season, but I think he's started to find his form in the last couple of months. I think he's struggled with injury. There was that whole thing under Gio where he was like, I'm not injured. I'm definitely not injured. Yeah. He was so obviously injured. Yeah. And then he later admitted he was injured. So he was playing through the pain barrier. Listen, everyone you speak to about Tav, outstanding leader, outstanding professional, big character in the dressing room. And I think he delivers. I really do. I'm looking at his stats now. This is a guy that's got 25 goal contributions in 50 games from right back in a season where he's not really performed at his best because of injury. 25 goal contributions in 15 games, right? He's got 21 goal contributions in 33 Premiership games. That's that's 2 in every 3 games. Now, I know he's getting older, but
he's still delivering, isn't he?
He's still delivering. And listen, he was unlucky with that header. He should have scored that header. He's put it downwards, but he's just headed it too hard down. It's almost like if he gets less on it, it's got a better chance of going in. It hits the ground too early. And listen, that shot and run for the shot that hit the post was terrific.
Yeah.
Very, very unlucky. I'm not ever going to be on the side of anyone who says get rid of Tav. Yes, you're going to get the occasional defensive mistake out of him. There's no doubt of that. For me, he could have done better. In terms of the goal itself, clearly he should have been aware of the player that was behind him, and he wasn't. It's a mistake, but there was a lot of mistakes in front of him before that.
Yeah.
This is modern football. Your fullbacks are going to bomb on. This is the way it is now. Dave McPherson is not the way forward. As much as I love Dave as a player, that is not what teams do now. Ball dominant teams who are looking to get forward and break down the low block, they need a player who's better going forward than he is going backwards. And that's Tavernier, But what he delivers is outstanding, and I'm not having it. I'm simply not having it. I get there's a lot of anger, but James Tavernier,
I think
consistently the stats show in Stats Bomb over the last 5 years, James Tavernier is the best player in Scottish football, the most consistent player. He's in the top 5 every year for the last 5 years, mostly at the top, by the way. That's because of what he delivers in terms of his outputs. So, yeah, I would not be for that.
Yeah.
Not even 2 million.
Yeah, I think he's one of those that you wouldn't realise how much you miss him until he's gone, Tavernier. But understand there is a bit of frustration with regards to him. I think that there always has been, hasn't there? Josh Foreman actually raised a point. Question is, should Tav really be a fullback? See there are a few comments saying get Adam Devine in at right back and push Tav further on, a la Fernando Rickson, if you can remember. He was pushed into midfield from right back, and it done him the world of good. It was terrific for Rangers in that title-winning season. But listen, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I know if Joshua was here, he'd be shaking his head, but it's time for experimenting, I think, for the final league match.
Do you know what? He's 31. See if I'm being honest, I sometimes look at Tav and think, I wish Rangers could have got you when you were 21 and turned you into a striker. Because his finishing is excellent.
Well, he wants to play as his fault. I've said this. Folks say, "Oh, I can't believe we're talking about it," but it's time for experimenting. Play him up front. Give him his wish. Let's see. You can't be any worse than Morelos. Put it that way.
Well, listen, I don't think it's going to happen at 31. But his quality in the box, his quality when it comes to the decisive moment is really, really good. And I wonder if he couldn't just have made it as a striker like his little brother.
Yeah.
Because he's got the qualities that are required in terms of that cool-headed killer instinct when it comes to the final moment, that's for sure.
Yeah. Right, let's get to a few more comments, folks. Interesting point. Matt Weir says we need to invest in the medical department as well as the playing staff. Yeah, we can't have another season like we did this term, of course. The raft of injuries and long-term ones has really been something else. So I think that's
something the club have been investigating and looking at. I don't think that's going to be an issue as much next year, put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's get to a few more. That's an interesting one. Jake551 says, God forbid if we lose the next couple of games, where does it leave Beale? For me, I'm not judging Michael Beale until next season. However, what happens if he does lose the next 2 games, Johnny? Does the pressure get ramped up on him?
Well, of course it does. But unless there was some sort of apocalypse, I'm not going to suggest that Michael Beale is anything other than a show-on to start next season. I mean, obviously, the club would be heavily criticised for hiring a manager, and then in the middle of a crisis, and then binning him on the back of a couple of bad results. He needs next season to reconfigure this side. There's obvious extenuating circumstances. There's 8 players out of contract who are understandably looking to their futures and thinking about now what's there for them outside of Rangers. So, look, do you know what? It's hypothetical. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Rangers will be absolutely fine. They've got Aberdeen, obviously, next. It's going to be a difficult game. They're desperate to get that 3rd spot, understandably, because it's a huge financial boon for them. Barry Robson's got them playing better. But I still think Rangers will take care of that game. I really do. The Celtic game is obviously more difficult. And there's no bones about it. That is one that you could certainly do with winning.
As much as it doesn't mean anything, he can't afford to lose that one, I don't think.
No, I agree. I think that would be very difficult going into the following season if that happens. But I think Aberdeen comes first, and then that game. If they can get a win in the next 2 home games, then I think it will go a long way to freshening up the atmosphere a little bit, because obviously you can see from the comments people are very angry. I'm getting absolute stick for saying that Fashion Sakala should be kept on as a squad player. I also said, folks, that if an offer comes in, they should take it. But what I said was I don't have a problem with Fashion Sakala being in the squad as a squad player because of what he delivers in terms of the chaos and the numbers in certain games. I think Derek. There's no doubt that a Rangers manager that struggles to beat Celtic is never going to be a Rangers manager for very long. But Michael Beale, I think, has shown tactically he's got the goods when it comes to these games. But when you have a forward line so lacking in penetration, what can you actually do as a manager? Now, that's 2 open goals that have been missed in 2 consecutive games. It's quite difficult to account for that. Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, the forward line last season at this stage, when we had 0 forwards, it was more potent than this year's version. We have actually, using the Neil Lennon air quotes there, strikers that are fit in the squad at the moment. Alistair Caithness gets in touch. Is this a comedy show? Sounds like glad to bring you a bit of hilarity on a Tuesday morning, Alistair. Right, let's get to a couple more before we wrap up.
Alistair, more information. Come on. If you're going to have a pop, have a pop with a bit of detail so we can pop back.
Yeah, absolutely. Jock gets in touch. He says, I would give Arfield an extension. As off the bench, he gives 100% and always good for a goal. Thoughts on this, peeps? Yes, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. And I know we need a clearing of the decks in the summer. And I've said that there should be no room for sentimentality. But for me, Scott Arfield is someone I think would be worthwhile keeping in and around the dressing room. I think he and Jack, now I know Jack's injured and a lot of supporters feel that he's too injury prone to be offering a new deal. But those are the 2 out of contract players, Johnny, that I would be thinking, is it worthwhile just giving them an extra year just to have them around the place? Because I feel that they can still contribute.
I don't agree on Arfield.
Not having it.
I think it's time. It's time for Arfield. And you know what, Derek, I do understand where you're coming from. And I'm not going to come on here if Arfield signs a new deal and say that's a terrible move or anything like that. I think his contribution this season has been good. He's got 9 goals. He's always a threat. He never gives less than 110%. He'd be a good player to have around the dressing room. But I just feel like the atmosphere, it needs a clean slate. And, you know, is the temptation not then to say, well, Stephen Davis would be good to have about the place. He doesn't want to retire.
I know what you mean.
I think it's time for a new broom. And the one player that I would personally keep at the moment is Ryan Jack. Because when Ryan Jack's fit, he's top class in Scottish Premiership terms. He's not going to play every game, 100%. He's going to have injuries. But I think when he's at it and he's fit, then he's so good that it's worth keeping him around. Obviously, his contract will have to reflect the fact that he's injured half the time. Should be some sort of pay-as-you-play deal or whatever.
Well, is he going to
accept that? If you can agree something like that, then I would definitely keep Jack around. But as for the others, I'd say thanks for your contribution, but it's time for a clean slate, I think, for everyone. And if you start holding on to players, regardless of who they are and regardless of what they've offered, and I don't think you can doubt what Arfield's offered. He's been a great signing. Yeah. If you hang on to players, I think the fan base are not going to be too happy. It's just the realpolitik. Michael Beale himself mentioned this, Derek. Maybe a couple of months back, he said, these players' futures will be defined by how they end the season. And you've seen how the season's ended, so I think you can draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, you can donate to the channel, folks. It's always greatly appreciated for folk that like to do that. Comment in here. We should be adventurous with players and style now. Thank you very much, buddy, for your donation. It certainly helps us do what we do here and talk all things Rangers. And yeah, I totally agree. It will be interesting to see what that team lineup will look like when Aberdeen come to Ibrox on Sunday and going forward as well. But certainly changes are afoot. Okay, I think that'll do us there. A bumper show this morning. Big thanks to Johnny and everyone getting in touch with the programme. If you want to subscribe to the website, website. You can see the ticker below. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. Just £2.99 per month. And if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, that's totally free. Over just approaching 12,500 now subscribers, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for all your support. We'll be back again tomorrow. Myself and Joshua will be on the show tomorrow. So hopefully you can join us for that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.